Welcome to this week's VLSI Insider Cloud Chat. I'm here with Andrea, Lati. This is Dan Hutcheson, and we're going to be talking about what happened with the war in Ukraine and how it might actually affect the semiconductor cycle. Welcome to the program, Andrea.
It's good to be back then.
So what are your thoughts on all this? You know, is there going to be a recoupling in the macroeconomy? Could there be a downturn? It's actually pulled into the second half of the year. And then what about our 24-25 downturn forecast?
Yeah, this unfortunate war probably changes things a little bit as far as the forecast is concerned. Last month, actually, we raised our semiconductor forecast to 15%, as you know. And then right after that, we had this conflict. And it's still a little bit too early to make any major changes in our forecast because if anything, we could actually end up even with a stronger year because all of this is doing is really tightening up an already tight supply chain. So I think the tendency here from the companies and even consumers would be to keep buying even more because, you know, of the uncertainty. And so I do think that, you know, 2022 will probably be a pretty good year, given that this war doesn't escalate too much. And then it's a matter of, you know, what happens in 23 and 24 and, what, you know, how companies will manage their inventories, because there is clearly an inventory buildup there. And
yeah, the interesting thing is that what we saw in, you know, late 2020 with the restrictions on Huawei was China started building up inventory, and then COVID came along. And then everybody started building up more inventory, and then the shortage came, and you know, we got more inventory. And it's, you know, one of the things about this is instead of causing a downturn, it actually might make the upturn higher because of people trying to protect their supply chains, right?
Correct, and that's been actually, you're right. It started with Trump, then we had COVID, and now we have a war. So, you know, and we have seen that, you know, that companies have shifted their mindset from just-in-time inventory management they had back in 2019 and earlier to just in case. So that's happening. It's just a matter of you know, figuring out how much the new normal will mean in terms of inventories. You know, whether it's going to be 3 months, 4 months worth, and that's one thing that we don't know yet, and that depends, you know, how things pan out in the next year or so.
Yeah, the other thing that's happening is you know, oil prices are driving gas prices up, which were already going up. And now you know, they're selling out of electric cars like crazy. The dealers were not calling us over the weekend. They were knocking on our door trying to get, wanted to know if we wanted to sell our Chevy Bolt.
Yeah, and of course now with the gas prices going higher, that's going to drive inflation even higher because we've had an inflation problem for the last year and I don't see the inflation going away. But again, inflation also drives consumers and businesses to speed up their purchases because they know the prices will be higher. So we are in this sort of cycle right now that the tendency will be to keep, you know, restocking more, double booking, building more.
And if it accelerates the move to electric cars, that electric cars have 2x the IC consumption of a conventional ICE engine, you know, and so that's good for the industry. That's the crazy part about it. All the sad stuff happening in Ukraine, the terrible horror there, and yet we actually might benefit from it, at least in the short term. So I think it's, like you say, it's too soon to start calling for a downturn.
Yes, it is. It is, and again, it all depends what happens geopolitically. And again, if we do get a very big year this year, right, let's say from that 15% that we have, we go to 25, then we might be pulling in the cycle quite a bit, actually. So then we might see a downturn in 23. Right now, we think that we'll see a slowdown in 24. But depending what happened this year, we could see the cycle shift by as much as a year.
Well, the other thing, too, is, you know, last year we had you know, it was all about chips, and now you were saying earlier, chips are the new oil, right?
Yes. Yes, chips were the new oil, and now, of course, now we have oil coming back with vengeance, as you know. So that's going to be interesting because, you know, they're both going up, basically. Oil for the obvious reasons, but also chips because of the inflation and higher demand.
Yeah, and then that kind of leads us back to, it's such a circular thing because it leads us back to what's the Fed going to do, because they're trying to deal with inflation.
Yeah, and the Fed obviously is in a pretty tight spot at the moment because inflation has been running quite high for the past year. And given what's happening right now, I think that the inflation is probably going to remain pretty high. So the Fed will have to start raising interest rates. It's just a matter of how aggressive they get with this interest rate increases, because I think the market is viewing the Fed sort of trying to engineer a soft landing. But again, it's very hard to time these things. And as you know, my feeling is that probably Fed will be a little bit cautious initially. So we might have this inflationary environment with us for, at least another year.
Yeah, which just drives more buying. And then if the Fed's activity, if they start raising rates, at a quarter of a percent per month, you're really not going to see effect until 2023.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing, is that there is always this lag, right? Especially in the monetary policy, and whenever the interest rate starts going higher, that you don't see right away. But it takes sometimes as much as the year before you see the results. So it will be interesting to see how the Fed manages this. But yeah, definitely the inflation is a big problem, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time today.
It's my pleasure.